Hi everyone and welcome to my living room. Today we're gonna build a feature wall that reacts to music. The project started by us planning the whole layout within SketchUp, and you could see here that we drew the wall, how it's gonna look. We drew the panels on the left and on the right, and we also planned the console that we were yet to build so we can hang it on the wall. And before we continue, let's thank this video sponsor, Altium 365, the future of electronic hardware development. Altium 365 revolutionized how we design and collaborate, making it easier and faster to deliver great products. With powerful data management and version control, you can securely store all your design's data and track changes effortlessly. Need components? Altium 365's library management gives you access to millions of parts and the latest supply chain data in one place. Plus, collaborating with your team is seamless with digital design reviews and real-time feedback. Streamline your project with supply chain management, offering real-time data on parts availability, pricing, and risk management, so your designs are always manufacturable. Whether you're looking to simplify complex product development processes or collaborate seamlessly with your team, Altium 365 has got you covered. To experience the incredible benefits of Altium 365, sign up for the free trial using the link in the video description. To install the LED channels, I use some silicone to apply it on the edge of the boards that we already had on the wall that are also faceted with silicone glue. So I added a bit of silicone glue to the back and front edges of the panel, and then you see me here adding the LED channel, and I chose the smallest LED channel that I could find because I wanted the appearance of it to be minimal, and for anyone that doesn't know that it's there to be basically invisible and just behave as a trim on the wall. To hold it in place while the silicone glue was drying, I used some masking tape, as you could see here, and that was strong enough to hold it in place. And you see here that one channel was not enough, so I added a small piece at the bottom that we'll see later. So you see me here applying a bit of silicone to the back and to the front, and that was plenty. So, and I didn't add silicone to the full length because it wasn't necessary. Just make sure to add it on several intervals, and that holds the LED channel nicely. In terms of squeeze out, I didn't bother to clean up any of it while it was drying because later on it's much easier to just wipe it off and break it from within the joint. So while installing, I didn't touch any of the squeeze out, and you could see it here. Once it dries, you could just rub it off with your finger, and that would not show any sign how it was applied. And here's me applying a bit of silicone to the bottom part and applying the smaller part of the LED track, where I made sure to just align the edges, and you could see that it's basically invisible. For the LEDs, I use the SK6812 RGBW variant, so they are RGB with an additional white LED because at times I want to have just a simple white glow from the end. And you could see there is an arrow pointing the data that direction, so it starts from one end and data travels till the end. And where you see these soldier joints, that is every 30 LEDs, so every half meter, so you could easily determine the length. And I started by first cutting off the factory terminals that are there and cutting off a meter in length from each of the two strips that I had. And this is because for the middle section, I wanted to have a section where the data comes as one strip, but it travels left and right to the channel, behaving basically as mirroring the effect. And here you see me gluing the LED tape into the channel with the backing that it has on the adhesive, making sure that I meet in the middle where the arrows will point outwards, so we can have that mirroring effect. And one thing that I didn't realize at the time is that when you reverse the direction of the LED, so you have one going one way and the other going other way, then you are basically mixing the 5-volt and ground connections on the LED strip. And at the time when I was soldering this, I didn't realize that, and I started by connecting wires directly. But when I went to connect the second wire, I realized that I'm mixing 5 volts and ground on the LED channels. So I had to back up and come up with a different plan. You will see me here after this. I'm gonna remove the LEDs and back it up just a bit, so I could use additional wires to break it off. So here I am removing the LED tape from the channel, and then I'll come up with 2 wires that would basically cross the wires to the LED strips. So here is one, and then you see that they are connected together, so they come up with one 5 volts and one ground connection, and they both come together so they can continue with the wire that I'm gonna use to power everything up. I'm using fairly thick wires because the LED strips require relatively high power and relatively high amperage because they work at 5 volts. So to get to the wattage they need, they're gonna be drawing something like, I don't know, 10 amps. I'll go into the math a little bit more later when we deal with the electronics. Here I'm adding some heat shrink to the wires, so I prevent any shorts from happening. And the small wire that you see that you see in the middle will be the one for the signal. And here I'm adding the covers, the plastic cover on the LED. Now mounting the whole strip was a bit of a challenge because it's gonna sit on the underside of the TV console, and here I'm adding a silicone glue to the back of it, and here, because it's gonna hang down, I added silicone to the entire length, and I marked the position where I wanted it on the back side of the TV console. This would have been easier when we installed the TV console, but it was already up there. I really didn't want it to take it off and attach it, but so I went and glued it on the other underside with some masking tape to hold it in place while this silicone dries. And you're gonna see here how that looks. So I offset it a bit from the wall because I wanted to have more like a diffuse look that would shine down in the floor. Now here I'm removing the plastic covering the diffuser from the channels that are now dry, and I'm gluing the LED tape within the channel, making sure that I keep it centered, and also making sure not to glue it all the way down because I will need to add some wires that will connect to the controller. So I'm going down almost till the end, and I'm leaving like 15 centimeters of the backing tape so it's not glued all the way in. And here is adding wires to it. This was a bit tricky both to film and to work because of the tight space. I did it this way because I didn't want it to stress the LED tape too much with the wires hanging from it when I was installing, because I'm using fairly thick wire, as I said before, and I didn't want it to have that extra weight in case I damage the LED strip. Best way to attach it is to add a bit of solder to both the tape and the wires, and then with your soldering iron you can just heat that up and connect both of them together. And for the signal wire, I'm using one pair of network cables, so I'm stripping the insulation and I'm getting one of the pairs where I'm gonna connect both of the wires as a single wire just to provide better path for the signal, because with longer runs and WLED you could have issues with the signal where you're gonna have flickering. And during the initial testing I was indeed getting some flickering with full white light on some of the strip, not all of them, and you would see later how I solved it by using one adapter that I made where I soldered just a single LED per strip from exactly the same strip. I soldered to a perf board and I connected it as close to the controller as possible. That way, that LED will act as a forwarder or as a repeater to the signal, so it's much stronger and much nicer for the rest of the LED, and that seems to have fixed the issue. To hide the cables, I'm using the built-in channel within the trim that I have on the flooring. This is where the screws for the trim are, and they are fastened to the wall, and removing the cover exposes a channel that can be used with cables, and exactly what I'm doing here. After I figure out what's the right length, I cut it to length, and here is how the cable goes through the trim, and you see it comes up in the middle. Off camera, I installed it on the right side in exactly the same way, and you can see that they meet in the midpoint where I'm gonna add a channel so they can be hidden and go in the top of the console on the TV. And the final step is to install the covering for the diffusers. And before we install the controller, let's jump to my desk so I can show you how it works. To control the LEDs, I'll be using this ESP32 in the room variant, and I already have some wires pre-soldered to it from when I was testing the setup. Specifically, I was testing the integration with the microphone because this is running the WLED variant with which is sound reactive, and I'll be inputting the sound through the Max 9814 microphone. That is connected to 3.3 volts and ground for power, and it's connected to pin D33 for the digital input of the signal from the microphone. During the testing, I only had one string of LEDs attached on pin D2, but in the final version, when we connect everything, I'm gonna have 3 such leads that will control the data input of the LED strips. And this one is for power. I'm providing 5 volts from the power supply. And for the power supply, I'll be using this 200 watt 5 volt power supply that's made by a company called Optonica. Live comes from the one side, and we have several outputs on the other. You could see it's rated for 200 watts, so DC 5 volts at 40 amps. And because we're gonna be dealing with some high amperage, I'm gonna add a fuse to each of the lines. So this is a holder for a car fuse. That's this, and I have 15 amp fuses that will go in each of the lines. The LED strip uses about 18 watts per meter, so I have 2 runs of 2.5 meters and 1 run of 2 meters, so that's about 3.5 3.6 amps at full brightness per meter. So if we bring the calculator, so I have 2.5 meters times 3.6 amps, so we should be drawing about 9 amps from the 2 side LEDs at full brightness, and we have a 15 amp fuse, so that should be okay, and we'll see how it goes. And lastly, I'm gonna use this electrical box for the enclosure. I'm gonna have the power supply sitting inside, and also the controller wires will come from one side, connect everything, and on the outside I'm gonna install this plug so I can provide mains power, and I'll have a switch so I can turn the whole thing off if I ever want to. I think that's about it. Let's start by building the enclosure and start to mounting things into it. For starters, these pillars here are in the way of the power supply sitting flush, so I'm gonna start by cutting them off, and then we're gonna mount the power supply to these holes on the side, and at the end the whole box will sit inside the TV console.
A few moments later.
Okay, so I did most of the assembly off camera, but I'm gonna show you what I did. So here comes the main, and it goes in here from the side where I have the cable twisted with the zip tie, so it provides some resistance going back and some strain relief on the cable. And the live wire, because of the plug we don't really know which one it is, but the live wire comes to the switch and it can be turned on and off, and then it goes to the live connection on the power supply, while the neutral and ground wires connect directly to the power supply. And here on the other side I connected the fuse holders to the 3 positive outputs on the power supply, and that comes out to a rail like this, where I could fasten the wires coming in from the LEDs on the wall. On 2 of them I tapped the outputs to provide power to the ESP32, which I glued to the side of the box so it's safe and secure. And also the microphone is mounted here on the side, where it comes out on the side to pick up the noise from the room. This will be enclosed, so hopefully that would be able to pick up the music coming in from the TV, but we'll see. I'm not sure. If that doesn't work, then I'll have to route it out somehow. We'll see how it goes. To control the data for the LEDs, I've used 3 DuPont cables that are connected to pins D2, D4, and D16, which are the 3 here on the side, one next to each other. The D2 and D4 will go to the side LEDs, and the D16 will go to the LED that is below the TV console. That's about it. I already have WLED here, so now let's go and install it in the TV console and try it out. So here is everything mounted within the box, and everything is nice and tidy. I've screwed it to the top of the console so the wires can come from the side, and this is the repeater that I talked earlier about. The signal wires come directly to the LEDs, and then they act as a repeater, and in the settings they are skipped off. So finally, the final touch for the whole project is adding the required sticker, and we can call this one done. I'm gonna leave you with some footage of how the whole thing operates with some of the YouTube library. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you all in the next one.